Hey gang, we are working today on a steel wheel Cutjack in M390. This has been super generously loaned for me to have an edge test of by one of my viewers. So yeah, what I'm going to do is get this factory edge. This has never been cut, never cut anything. Factory edge, I'm going to make it into a 17 degree per side polished edge. I think I'll go with the Lansky to a polished edge and just kind of see what I can get this M390 and this one to do. So if this is your first video here, I had a problem with my Modus, a very similar knife to this one that I ordered from Steel Wheel. I couldn't get it to hold an edge. I tried numerous different edge angles on it, and I just couldn't get it to really stick, cut more than 100 bits of rope before it was just not slicing the paper anymore. So yeah, it was just underperforming. So what I'm doing here is I just colour in the edge just so I can see what I'm wearing away. I'll be wanting to make this probably a little bit of a higher edge. I don't think it's come at 17 degrees, probably closer to maybe early 20s or something like that. Most factory edges do. In Steel Wheel, they use an Italian factory, Mazarin, to make these knives. Mazarin, a little bit like line steel, can sometimes, reported to me, can be a bit thick behind the edge. So just colour in this edge. We'll just thin it out a little bit and put the 17 degree on it. It also removes any perhaps burnt steel, using especially this method because I'm using a Lansky system. So the diamond stone takes a fair bit of stuff off, so it removes any possible burnt steel in there. So yeah, I'll be using the diamond, medium, and then fine diamond stones, and then some ceramic stones to get into a polish. So yeah, I'll do this whole process. I'll film the whole process. I probably will fast forward it a bit because it's pretty dry stuff, and this might be like an hour or so, or actually a bit longer even, depending on how hard this M390 is to sharpen. So you never know, but certainly happy to give Steel Wheel a few more shots. I would say you'd need a fair bit of bogus feeling blades to be able to say anything about the company as a whole. Certainly will say pretty happily that my knife was poorly done, like the steel, and that was just not working for me. They've had delivery of the knife now. I got a notification in my emails. I sent it back to them after I did all my testing on it. They'll let me know if they think there's anything wrong with it or not. So you can watch previous edge tests of me. This was the same edge. I'll be putting the exact same edge on this knife that I put on like the Cold Steel CTS XHP a few videos back. So 17 degree edge, blade of about the same sort of dimension even. So I think it's I think it's pretty. I'm pretty happy to say that I can sharpen this steel. You can watch all my Unleashed testing. Should be able to see all the previous tests I've done. So let's have a look there. Not too far off. 17 degrees actually. Maybe a little tiny bit higher. Yeah, a little tiny bit. I'd say it's probably about a 20 degree edge from the factory, which isn't bad. This is my coarse Lansky stone, the purple one. Takes off material pretty quickly, of varying difficulties, depending on how hard the steel is and what type of steel it is. The M4 actually, the CTS CPM 110V has been the hardest so far, even harder than M4 or even Maximet to sharpen, in my opinion. The 110V on my Spyderco Para 3, tricky. Just going to take a break now. Dinner is ready. It seems to be a bit trickier to sharpen than the Modus was. The Modus managed to do all the edge changing with this stone, and I didn't need to use this stone. This one needed a few passes of this stone, so it seems a bit different. I guess we'll see once we start cutting with it. Following morning. Let's do some more. Got busy last night. Alrighty, so I've got a super sexy, scary sharp edge on the steel wheel Cutjack. We'll see how it goes against twisted sisal rope. So this is the M390 steel wheel Cutjack edge retention test. Polished edge, 17 degrees per side. It's a pretty nice edge. Like there's no burrs on it or anything like that. It's about as it's about as good as any other edge I've put on a knife. So we shall see. Fingers crossed. For Christ's sake, you don't want it to be, a second one would be like, ugh. Have even more annoying conversations to have. Alrighty, get to it. So 450 passes until it no longer cut. And that is until, you know, let's have a look at, so the end of the unused bit of the knife still bites in like crazy, no issues at all. You can just kind of chop in there, chop, 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 chop. And then the used bit of the knife is obviously it's cactus. So that's what we're after, and that's what this test gets to. So I use from this part to this part of the knife, consistently sort of saw cutting rope. And yeah, 450 is an excellent result, and that is what you would expect and hope for from your M390 blade. So steel wheel Cutjack fans, it's a good result for sure. And I'm very, very happy with that, because I did not want to get a second randomly chosen steel wheel that didn't do very well. Because as even with my last video, in the comments on that one, people tend to, you know, people can jump to conclusions a little bit, especially once, yeah. And if I could do it all again, I would do it the same way, because I film everything longhand, I sharpen everything. I did the exact same with this as I did with the Modus that didn't work. There is no difference whatsoever in my sharpening methods, in my sharpening system, in the angles that I used, all the same. So I'm pretty happy to say that that Modus was really no good, because it's a very, very similarly ground and shaped blade, except it's kind of a sheep's foot. Everything else, the thickness, all that is pretty much spot on. So yeah, this is a good result. The Modus was still a bad result. But yeah, what does this mean for steel wheel? Well, it doesn't mean much for steel wheel, really. I'm just one, as I've said from the start, I don't want to grandstand. I'm just one person who tests the knives. I just happen to test them on YouTube rather than test them and then post them in a forum or post them in a blog or something like that. This is just my medium. It's a beneficial medium because I have the opportunity to actually show you everything. Lots of people talk and talk and talk, but they've got no way of actually showing you what they have done. So I think this is good for, like, I hope for transparency, but also just for, A, it's interesting to see someone's full process, I hope, and B, because yeah, it's a way of getting an exact picture of exactly what I'm actually doing. If you look at this as a machine, so you've got the elements of the machine are the rope, the cutting board, the knife, and the me. And really the me is just as much a part of it as anything else, which is why this test should only really be one that you take, you know, as a piece of the puzzle rather than as the entire puzzle. Because yeah, I cut a certain way. Like, it is just what I do. I cut the same way every time, but I cut a certain way. So I am just as much of a an element at play here for sure. And what I hope that this all sort of encourages is a curiosity amongst sort of most knife users about how this stuff is actually going to perform. I have been surprised by some knives, and both good and bad, and sort of let down by knives as well. Because I actually, pretty much every knife for review, I cut at least 100 bits of rope with it, just to check that it's a great check of ergonomics as well. Brilliant way for an actual reviewer to get some repetitive use on a knife that would usually take, actually taking it out and doing some task. And how often do we all have a task that needs repetitive cutting? So it's good for that, but it is also good, yes, for bringing out any unusualities in the steel. If I have a knife that is made of M4 and it was to sort of stop cutting at 50 cuts of rope, I would know that there's something going on there. That hasn't happened yet, but that's kind of what happened with the Modus from Steel Wheel. So that Modus, I got a notification it arrived in America and was delivered yesterday, I think. So I'm not sure what they'll do with it. They might just Rockwell test it. They might do nothing with it. They might say there's nothing wrong with it. I don't know. All I can say is that I did the same thing with that knife as I did with this knife. And this knife's awesome. This knife did really, really well. And that knife, and I tried a lot of different things with that knife and I couldn't get it to work. So, don't know. But anyway, yeah, so use me as a piece of the puzzle. There are other really good steel resources out there. I know this is kind of I kind of, just from being YouTube, I sort of know what appeals to people a bit. Having a nice list and having it all kind of easily digestible and all that sort of stuff is, it's a part of the appeal. But by all means, if you are really trying to make your mind up on two steels, or I'm always happy to talk. If I've got the time, I'm happy to email back and forth or whatever. But Michael Christie is probably a more scientific method than me, because he does push cuts through, like vertical push cuts through cardboard, inches cut. There is less sort of like user interaction with it, so to speak. So I would say his methods may be even more matchable if you were to say match them yourselves. I would definitely check out Cliff Stamp's work, his forums. He's like a no-nonsense, kind of blunt sometimes, but very no-nonsense, and obviously highly experienced steel and knife user. And yeah, check out like Big Brown Bear and Apostle P and people like that. Generally, as I always say, I say this a lot to people, there's one version, there's another version of the truth somewhere in the middle. So I'm doing it one way, plenty of people do it another way. I do hope that if this kind of, anyone who did take my previous video as a complete lack of faith in steel will, I do sort of, I suspect this might at least put some more questions in, oh, maybe it was just that original knife or whatever. Because this, whatever this steel is, it's very, very good with the edge retention, so I have no reason to not think it's M390. This serial number on this one is 0080. So maybe an earlier Cutjack in M390. I think the owner just had it in a box. So there you go. Alright guys, well I hope you've enjoyed. I'll keep doing this, and I hope you've hope you found this enlightening. More M390 testing to come from Steel Wheel though, for sure. Especially on my follow-up Modus that I get. So I'll catch you in the next one guys. Bye now.